All right, are we ready to do this?
Yep.
Got your phone turned down?
Yep.
Here we go. Welcome to the Practically Speaking Mom's 50th episode. Val has counted it such a huge blessing to be able to minister to intentional moms building strong families for many years, and particularly over the last year with this podcast. Since she added the podcast to her ministry, it has registered listeners in 44 countries around the world, including places like Brazil, Australia, South Korea, several African nations, Saudi Arabia, and the Philippines. So a big shout out and thank you to our international listeners. Today, we wanted to do something fun to mark this milestone. I wanted to take this episode to go behind the scenes a little more than usual, and this time she's the one on the interview hot seat, and I'm asking her the questions. Let's go ahead and jump into this 50th episode of the Practically Speaking Mom, Intentional Mom, Strong Family podcast. So first, what's with the long title? Practically Speaking Mom, Intentional Mom, Strong Family podcast. That's a lot.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, my ministry has been Practically Speaking Mom for a long time because I've been a speech teacher for a long time. My degree was speech communications. I love helping kids come across with confidence and just being able to speak the truth in love and being able to give a reason for the hope that we have. All of those things have been a passion of mine for a long time and been a big part of my life. So I actually have taught classes for a long time that were practically speaking classes, and those were for students.
Okay.
And then also I had a ministry to moms that was, speaking at events and retreats and that kind of thing. So it needed to continue into my podcast. But the theme of this podcast is intentional moms building strong families. And so I just needed it to all be encompassed in there, along with the fact that with Apple Podcasts and some of the others, they really tell you, make your title really long, get as many keywords in there as you can. So anyway, there you go.
Okay. And that idea of intentional, that as honestly this past year, as we've done this podcast and I've become really more a part of this ministry, I do the editing for the podcast and have really tried to help support the new directions that your ministry is going.
You're also all the products. Like we could not get products to people without you. You are all of the necessary parts.
Let's just say it. I'm the behind the scenes guy all around.
Yeah, right.
Okay. No, but over the past year, this idea of intentional, it has just really become so much clearer to me watching you do your ministry, more engaged in that from my side. That idea of intentional is so important. Can you speak to that?
Oh man, it is. It's really the cusp of all of what we want for our family, of what we want for our marriage, of what we want for our relationship with God. It all boils down to intentionality. If we are not long-term focused of sticking with what is the best way, then we're going to lose heart. We're going to lose energy and motivation and willpower, all of these things. It just really boils down to intentionality. We can't get to the right place if we're not headed in the right direction and know where we're going.
Okay. Now, you just mentioned marriage and family and different areas of our life. And when you started your podcast, you gave this idea of the 6 rooms of a house, the 6 rooms of a home. And I thought that was a neat idea, a great structure to give you context for the various things that you wanted to talk about. What happened to that?
Oh, it's still there. My website is completely set up based on the 6 rooms of the Intentional Mom's home so that you can find information more easily when you go there. So you can go to the kitchen to find out what are a few recipes that I use, or that you can see what are things that I am developing in my own self, working on my own health, just becoming more healthy. Being on that journey back to health really has been my theme with that. So that would be in the kitchen. And then there's the master suite for our marriage relationship stuff. And then the front porch is on there. And that's really a focus mostly on mom's relationship with God as well as self-care. And
So that's really a kind of retreat place or a mom's sanctuary type idea
yep.
where she can be a little introspective.
Yes, which the front porch is that because it's in nature and also because my kids can play outside in the yard and I can be up on the porch where I'm still watching them, but I also I can focus in a little on some time with God or some time for me while I'm still doing the mom thing. So the front porch for me kind of encompassed that. Maybe with other moms, it's their back porch. It's just happened to be my front porch at my house. We have a big front porch.
We do have a neat
and we had a crummy backyard, but we're actually under renovation right now.
We're
to
working
fix
on
that.
But I just think it's funny though, because you actually prefer to be indoors. You are not an outdoor person. So but we like our front porch. It is a pleasant place when the weather is right. So
I kind of rabbit trailed in all of this from your question, but
True.
the point is the website is set up as the 6 rooms. I don't focus every week on that on the podcast because I just felt like it would get pretty redundant sounding if I'm constantly talking about the 6 rooms, but they're there and that's how you find the various informations on the website.
Okay. Next question sounds pretty standard interviewee, but I want to ask it anyway so you can kind of let people know. What do you feel is important for your listeners to know about you that they may not already know?
So for sure, the most important thing is to know that I'm not perfect, that all of my episode themes are based on my biggest failures and constant mistakes. I've just failed a lot, but I'm willing to learn from my mistakes. I am passionate about seeking forgiveness and repairing from mistakes in our family because I have also lived through not being careful about that and letting those relationships be hurt. So recognizing the bad path where it takes you, it just really has made me so passionate about repair. And so that's for sure the number one thing that I want moms to know is you're not listening to a perfect mom on this podcast. You're listening to the mistaken parent, like the theme that I had recently with a couple of podcasts. Now, the second thing that I really want our listeners to know is if they're married and they'll apply that same principle to marriage, to always seek repairing and always seeking what is best for that relationship. If both of you can get on board with that concept, you can take a marriage from a big mess to truly like indescribable. I'm so thankful for the marriage we have. And it's because we both laid down our weapons and took each other's hand and said, you know what? We have to take massive leaps forward, even when it's uncomfortable. We've got to quit being focused on us, on our individual, I've got to win against you. And we've got to lay down our weapons and do this together. Mm-hmm. And so that's the second thing. And the third thing, this isn't something specifically about me, but it is about that God's ways are always the best ways. If we can be intentional about God's ways are always the best ways, and couple that with the relationships, with these relationships that we're not going to do it perfectly, but we are always going to repair. And our goal, our standard, we have a good standard with each of those relationships that I want to not do things based on emotions, but based on what's really best for this relationship. Then those are the things that makes all the difference. And honestly, there's 3 words. I knew you were going to ask this question. So in thinking about it, there were 3 words that came to my mind: honesty, humbleness, and honoring one another. I know those are 3 H's. I literally came up with them and then realized that they were all 3 H's. But really, that's what those healthy relationships boil down to: honesty, humbleness. Is that humility?
Humility.
Thank you. See, we should do outtakes on all of the words that I make up. Anyway, so humility and honoring one another above ourselves.
Okay. No doubt there have been some tough things that you've encountered, we've encountered through your ministry time. So why do you keep doing this on the hard days? Or what are some of those tough things that you've encountered, and what do you do to push through those?
Okay, so for sure the most challenging thing in this podcast ministry that we have, or the podcast side of the ministry, is technology. I just stink at it. I'm really good.
No, honey, you're great.
I'm really good at messing up technology. So there's that. But, that's part of life, and probably most of the moms feel that same way. The second thing that's super challenging, we wrestle with this a lot, and that is that this ministry truly is a ministry. It costs us way more than what I bring in.
Wait, do we bring in money?
Sometimes.
Once in a while, yes, we do.
Especially in COVID, we kind of really don't.
No, okay. For real.
But I love that you are constantly telling me not to worry about that and to just speak what God lays on my heart.
Definitely.
And to constantly keep it about that. And I really appreciate that you do that. But it is something that I'm constantly wrestling with is, God, what do you want the next steps to include that will help take care of that? Like, anyway, there's a lot of different things that kind of maybe God is working on there. And I'm just trying to not jump past him and only do each step that he wants me to do. And much of that is thankful to you that you help me not try to outrun God in that, but go at his pace and take the steps that he wants me to take, and only those steps. So, but anyway, that's the second thing that's really challenging for me. But always, this is a ministry before a business. And so I'm thankful you helped me keep my eyes straight on that. Now, the other thing that I really struggle with is that my heart is so full of things that I want to share with all the moms. And it is really hard, challenging to narrow down our podcast into a bite-sized amount, because really 25 minutes is our goal. And it is so hard to scale back. I put more content in than that. And then you have the hard job of narrowing it down to what is just part of that. And so honestly, I would love feedback from moms on this point. Do you like shorter podcasts with less meat that goes less deep? Do you want it to be longer podcasts that go deeper with more meat? Or do you like it when we break it up into multiple weeks long,
two or three sections, 2 or 3 episodes in one topic, if you will? Right,
so that we can go deeper, but we just take some weeks to do it, and that way keep each episode short. So that is a constant challenge too. Is just I want to put a lot of meat in there, and yet I also want to keep it fun and some lighthearted, and it's just hard to get all that to fit.
Definitely. So along with that, has there been anything this past year through the podcast or longer than that through the ministry that you've described that's just really been devastating?
Well, first I got to say, this is not the 1-year anniversary. That will be coming up soon.
Yes.
But this is the 50th episode.
Right.
And it was just a big milestone that I thought we needed to celebrate. I know I'm feeling celebration about it. And you would think that it would be the 1-year anniversary because
there's only 52 weeks in a year.
But we started the podcast, we launched it with like 4
I think it
was
more than that. I think it was like 6 or even maybe.
I don't know. There was some multiple amount that we started with.
Right. Yeah. First launch of the podcast, we had several episodes published at once.
And it was October 10th.
Yes,
so
it was.
We will do a 1-year anniversary podcast as well. That'll be special. So for this 50th one, your question is, have I experienced anything devastating regarding the podcast? And yes, the week that we were preparing for the marriage, we prepared a family marriage retreat, something God laid on our hearts a few years ago. And we took a few years to develop it for just our married kids and us to experience this marriage retreat. And we felt such big spiritual warfare the last week leading up to that weekend that then became a podcast. And honestly, we have more podcasts to share with you guys about that.
Right.
Honestly, the big meat of that weekend, there is so much that God has laid on our hearts to share with all of you guys. We just haven't gotten a chance to share it with you yet. But anyway, that week was so hard. I mean, all kinds of difficult things happened. The worst of which was I lost about 20 episodes of content that I'd been working on.
I forgot about
that was gut wrenching, and including I lost some that we had recorded, but I lost all the content for 20 episodes, and that you can't get it back. You can't get it back.
Right. What's been something that's been rewarding? What's been the most rewarding thing?
Well, it's super rewarding to live out my calling. I love loving on moms, encouraging them, living out my passions. God is just keeps filling me with content that I just have this strong desire to share it with moms. And I love that I get to do that. And I get to do it on lots of different layers. Like, it's not just the podcast. It's the podcast and Instagram and the Intentional Mom Strong Family Facebook group. And it's on the website, and it's getting to communicate with behind the scenes people who want coaching, or with when I get to speak at events and do retreats. I love retreats. There's so many layers in which I get to live out my passion. And I'm so blessed and thankful that I get to do that. And another aspect of what's rewarding is doing it with all of the family. Like, it's so neat to see how, even though God calls me to something that's time consuming, something that's hard, something that's sacrificial and costly, it also is a way that God allows the kids different abilities and your abilities to play it. You know, God is so like this. He is this master puzzle designer, and he forms all these puzzle pieces that fit together so perfectly, and the overall picture is so beautiful. And he does this over and over again throughout all of our lives. He's the great big puzzle maker, and I love it.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So you mentioned doing this with all the family, and I think we've had every member of our family on the podcast, all of the kids. We haven't, I don't think we've had any of the sons or daughter-in-law on yet.
I think they haven't, the listeners haven't heard yet, but you recorded with the couples after the marriage retreat.
True.
They shared some, so
yes,
they'll get to hear in-law kids.
But all of our children have been on, and of course, me. I'm the, practically speaking, mom's husband. But have you had a favorite episode?
Well, I definitely love the ones with the kids. You know, I mean, our children, every mom's child is like their favorite part of them. They're like the trophy of us, right? And so I love that.
I think that's a great description. But we are prouder of them than we are of ourselves.
Yes, for sure. Most of the time you just want to kind of walk around with a little pin on your shirt that's a picture of all your kids, because they're like the best part of you. And then as your kids grow up and move out, and we moved to a new place with only half of our kids, and I really wanted to wear a pin that had a picture of all of them to say, really, I'm a mom of all of these kids.
Yeah.
You know, this is who I am. Don't look at me. This is who I am. But anyway, I digress.
Right.
I love working with my kids in this, and all the guests have been super fun. I love bringing a guest on who shares something that I know will really resonate with the moms.
Who have
especially
the guests?
So we had Amanda Kalady a couple of times. She's been a favorite because she deals with mental health in moms and kids, and that's so important these days, more than ever. That just keeps being a growing need. So I love having her on. I had a really good time with Jim Hodges just because I love literature and I love history, and he's also into public speaking. So we I had fun with that. But Rich, you are my ultimate favorite guest. I love having you on the podcast, and just this being another way that we get to do life together is pretty awesome.
It is a lot of fun.
Yep.
Okay. So, what other guests? You mentioned Amanda and Jim Hodges. Of course, all of our children, myself.
I've
Who
kept
else?
it, well, there's John Knotgrass from
Okay.
Knotgrass History. I've kept it really a lot family, our family focus, because my heart is really about relationships. And so when I have family members on there, we're able to talk about relationship stuff. And so I love that. And I have way more of that I want to share, but I also have a lineup of guests that will be coming,
Oh, and you did the Christmas episode.
and included a lot of my friends. That's true. That was fun.
Well, but and the life in the
Oh,
cooperative
Life in the Mundane.
Mundane.
My Katie Walkies. I'm probably saying her name wrong, but I love Katie. If you moms if you're not into YouTube channels yet, you need to get into them. Katie has a great one called Life in the Mundane. And yeah, that was a lot of fun to have her on. I'm sure I'll have her again. You know what? I need to mention what was my favorite one was when the kids and I surprised you with an episode that you didn't help on. I can't believe it, but I even did the technology for it. But so we
and
thought,
it even turned out pretty good.
yeah. So we thought it was exciting and fun to do this surprise for you. We had you listen to it on Saturday night when it was going to publish, or maybe Sunday night. I don't remember which, when it was going to publish early Monday morning, because these always publish on Monday mornings. And at the time, man, we just loved watching you be surprised by that, and hearing all of the kids and myself poured words of love into you. And that was so awesome to watch. But then the real amazing thing happened Monday morning. So you didn't know about that podcast. So you had already produced a podcast for that week, and thus you didn't know it, but we were pushing that out a week. Well, so you watched that on Saturday or Sunday night, and
Listened
then
to it.
you listened to it. And then on Monday morning, your mom passed away. And so because God, at the last minute, gave me that idea of creating that surprise podcast episode for you, we were able to air that Monday, and you didn't have to do anything, and you didn't have to prepare one for the next week either, because you already had. So God lined that up for you to get 2 weeks off. And we didn't even know that that was the real surprise that we were working on. But isn't that just like our great God, to put one more puzzle piece in place that would be so needed at the time? And it's those little kinds of things like that are just little reassurances that, yep, I'm listening to God, and yep, he's still interacting, and he's still the one molding and making, and the true producer of this podcast.
Absolutely. He is still in charge for sure.
Yeah.
So has there been one that's been the most popular with listeners so far?
Well, our top ones are for sure the ones on mom's mental health. So look for any of them with our guest Amanda, and she's a family and marriage therapist. Am I saying that right? I always say it wrong.
Licensed marriage and family therapist.
Thank you. And for sure, our marriage ones are really popular. But our number one most popular is the one, well, it's a couple episodes long, but with Tori, our oldest daughter, Tori, who's a youth director. We talked about teens and middle schoolers and getting their lies that they believe under control. And then also the episode with her where we talk about girls' self-esteem and that kind of thing. And then the other that has been most popular is with our daughter Becca, who has littles. And so there's several we've done. Those are always a big hit. The ones where we're talking about younger kids and all of their stuff that younger moms need help with.
I just think it's funny. I'm laughing because you mentioned the popular ones are with our kids, Tori and Becca. And we've said a little bit ago that we're prouder of our kids than we are of ourselves. It sounds like the audience likes our kids better than us too.
Yep, that's true. I always knew.
Yes.
I always knew. Which, I answer that based on the numbers. Like I look at what are the amount of numbers of listeners,
The most
listens,
listened to-
downloads.
Oh, downloads, right. Have there been any that you would consider kind of the hidden gems?
Oh, man. honestly, there are so many of them that I wish I could. Every time I make a podcast episode, I am trying to look at it from a whole bunch of angles, like the angles of the mom with grown kids, the angles of the mom with only new babies, all of the different angles and scenarios of moms. And I try to fit in nuggets of gold, of necessary help for all of those moms in the different episodes, that I really try to make them well-rounded. But then when I quote unquote advertise them, it's really hard. How do you make a title for something that has a whole bunch of different things that it's accomplishing in it, but I can only do one title, or I can only make one picture? And so I really feel like all of them that they haven't listened to yet, it might be because they haven't listened to it because they think the title suggests it's not for them. But I really did try to think of all of them in all of the episodes.
Okay. So the hidden gem is all of them.
Yes.
Okay. That's for you listening, that you got some homework to do then. Go back and find all the ones you haven't listened to and listen to them.
Yeah, I have this cycle that I go through when I make a podcast.
Absolutely. I know exactly what you're about to say.
As soon as I make it, I'm like, oh, this is great. This is the best one we've made. And then I listen to it a couple days later and I'm like, Rich, this is no good.
We got to redo the whole thing.
Throw it out. It's no good. And then I listen to it again that night and I'm like, Rich, it's good. It's good. We have to keep it.
Yes.
I'm just constantly going through this cycle, and I'm so thankful that you are by my side to give me some help. And then I
gotta say first, that used to stress me out, but now it's just how it goes. I know that's what's going to happen.
I'm going to say, throw it away.
Right. So what can the listeners expect coming up? Where are we going from here?
Oh, we have a great lineup of things I'm really excited about. Two of them are topics that I've been talking about with Abby, our just about 16-year-old. One of those is because she's coming up to her 16th birthday in our house, we have them go through all of these purity books. We want them to really read it all and think it through and pray it through. And we have lots of discussion and that kind of thing. So we're coming up to her 16th birthday, which is kind of the deadline that we like to put on these books. And so Abby and I plan on doing a podcast about several of these different books. And I'm looking forward to that because that is a critical topic in kids' lives today, is the dating world, relationships, sex before marriage, so many things there that are just critical. And I'm looking forward to that one. And then another one with Abby is she and I are two extremely different personalities. And she's got this beautiful, awesome heart, like I want to be like her when I grew up kind of heart. And I know a lot about relationships. And yet still, even though she's awesome and I know a lot about how to do relationships, we clash quite a bit. And it's because we have different personality types. And we want to do a podcast for the listeners to talk about, this is how we handle that conflict. This is how we repair from it. But this is how we talk it out and make it beneficial for our relationship instead of just something to struggle with and not learn from. So that's another one coming up. And then I have a guest lined up for health, for mom's health, a guest lined up for volunteering. That podcast, the volunteering one, has been ready to go for a long time with this guest and the content. And guess what's been holding us back is COVID. You can't really do a lot of volunteering during COVID.
Right.
So that has been on hold. And I actually have several planned regarding personality types, because that's a big role in our family life. And that's just one of the things that I've loved talking about in the past as a speaker in person, but I haven't really done on the podcast at all.
And it always seems to be, when you're a public speaker, that always seems to be a pretty popular topic that,
for sure,
that your audiences really resonate with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that, you're really great at helping me stay focused on What is God telling you right now to do? What does He want in this podcast? I know you're feeling a lot of struggle this week, Valerie, with the topic. What does He want? Not what do you want, or what do you think the audience even wants, but what does God want? And that always helps transform every episode to be a lot better of a place than it would be without you helping me stay on track with listening to God's voice. But in that listening process over the past 50 episodes, it has been interesting that He has not released, He's not said, okay, go with the personality type stuff and our top, the 6 questions of your child's heart and the 6 questions of your spouse's heart. All 3 of those topics are just something we're hugely passionate about. We feel like God has given us a ton of content we have utilized in lots of other ways, in small groups, in large groups, in retreats, in seminars, but for some reason, He has not yet released us to do it on the podcast. So I'm super anxious and excited for when that day comes where He says, okay, now.
And we've mentioned that's been mentioned on the podcast before, these 6 questions of our children's hearts, 6 questions of our spouse's heart. And not to keep teasing it, but it really is just, we don't know what God's doing with it yet, but He hasn't said, let it go.
Right. He hasn't said, okay, now. Yeah. So that's some of the stuff coming up.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you all could see us right now. Right now, we're sitting on a couch in Branson recording this episode because we took our 5th son to College of the Ozarks today, dropped him off. He's starting his college career, and we get just a little bit of time after that to sit down and celebrate this 50th episode. And what a joy it has been to do this ministry together with each other. How blessed Valerie has been to do this ministry for you moms. She just loves it, and she's certainly, in my opinion, she's gifted for it, and we've just really enjoyed it.
So we love all of you guys. We pray for you. We are excited to continue to have the privilege to join in your house once a week. And I love connecting with you on the other avenues, such as Instagram. And I want to keep that up with you. So if you haven't had a chance to connect with me, you can do that at practicallyspeakingmom.com. Just scroll to the bottom of the page, put in your email address once a week. You will get an email from me every Monday that will contain the blog post and podcast. And what else do we want to add to that? On Instagram, you can find me at Practically Speaking Mom. And I hope you will share a review and give me feedback on what you would like to see. What things have we brought up in this that you'd like to give your opinions on? Because we would really value that. Sometimes we get stuck in our own heads and we really need an outside perspective. So we'd love to have yours. If you want to give feedback, I really love to receive it in my Intentional Mom Strong Family private Facebook group. If you get on there, then once a week I post the podcast, and I love to get feedback on there, and we can discuss back and forth the topics. I would really love to do more of that. So be sure and give your feedback on there, or ask questions about the topics that we talk about within an episode on that episode in the Facebook group.
All right, very good. Well, that's all I had for you, and I think you're awesome. You're great at this, and I love you.
I love you.